Welcome to the January Rotary Club of South Jacksonville. It's a great day to be a member of Rotary. We ask that you silence your phone and conversations, and if you're attending on Zoom, we welcome you also and ask that you mute yourself. Thanks to Gary Wilkinson and a multitude of other folks for welcoming our guests today. I'd like to invite Stephen Jones up for our pledge and prayer.
Let's go with the pledge first. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Happy New Year, by the way. Okay, so please bow your heads. If we can do some good today, if we can serve along life's way, if we can something helpful say, Lord, show us how. If we can right a human wrong, if we can help to make one strong, if we can cheer with smile or song, Lord, show us how. If we can aid one in distress, if we can make a burden less, if we can spread more happiness, Lord, show us how. Amen. Amen.
Thank you, Stephen. Everybody, y'all have a seat. I'm now going to call upon Mitch Caney to introduce our guests and visiting Rotarians.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
So I understand that Ms. Tamara Baker has a guest for us this afternoon.
Yes, I have a guest. Kelly Velocic. She's our engineering manager at Baker Design Build. She's joining me today and start off the new year.
All right, and also Tom Rainey has a guest as well.
I do. I have someone joining us from everyone knows, and he's having a good chance for everyone to
That's all we have. Thank you.
Oh, no. Oh, no, you can walk away.
We here at Rotary welcome you today. So glad you came along, glad you came our way. Our hand of fellowship is yours, in sunshine or in rain. We here at Rotary say welcome, come again.
We also have one visiting Rotarian, but I'll introduce him in a few minutes to talk about a matter regarding the downtown Emerald Trail. I haven't seen Julia. Is Julia here? No, anyway. So let me talk about our family at Rotary. First of all, Dick Morales celebrated a birthday on January 6th, Martha Barrett on January 8th, Larry Cavallero yesterday, and it's Vicki Lynn Gloger's birthday today. Is Vicki Lynn here? Anyway, all right. And Hal Kelly will have a birthday on January 13th. Years of service, past President Richard Dow, 16 years on January 16th. Ron Patrick, 11 years of service today, as of today. And past President Bill Langley, 10 years of service as of this January 8th. And here, and Julia Kalinsky will hit 5 years of service on January 16th. One additional sad note, past President Mayo Mills passed away recently. Mayo was club president during the 2002-2003 year. He was a graduate of Georgia Tech with a degree in industrial engineering and then went into financial planning after a stint in the Air Force. And my understanding is that he was instrumental in starting the club's annual charity gala. Keep him in your. So for those of you who might have been out of town at various times during December, we had a lot of fun, even though we didn't have many of our regular meetings. Thanks again to Robert Harris for hosting the club at his home for a holiday lunch, and that is always thanks again also to everyone that helped with the setup of the gingerbread house extravaganza. My understanding is that it went extraordinarily well. I took the grandsons down there right around Christmas time, and I couldn't really believe how nice it looked, even though we left it with all the electric, and it was still, it's just amazing the transformation. And I talked with some of the staff working, and they said they were having a tremendous turnout. So I'm sure the Jacksonville Historic Society is very appreciative. I'd also like to give some special recognition to our 4 newest members of the club who were inducted during December. Katie Rudderman, Adina Poland, Bernie Lucky, and Lisa Kennedy. I know many of you have met all of these individuals, but if you please take a special time during our upcoming meetings or today to get to meet them, get to know them a little bit better, and welcome them to the club. We're very welcome to have them here, and we're looking forward to some additional folks very soon. All right. Now I'd like to thank all of you who bought tickets to one of the Rotary-sponsored Jaguar games. It was a great fundraiser for Rotary's efforts to eradicate polio during this year. And as someone predicted at our November 8th meeting,
Who was that?
I don't know. It keeps echoing in my head. There was a chance that the Jaguars might win the AFC South Division during the Titans game. For those of y'all that missed Saturday night, it was incredible. It was rocking down at the stadium, and I'm sure it will be the same way this weekend when the Jaguars try to hold on to their position within the playoff system. So, but thank everyone for your participation, buying tickets, and I hope it was enjoyable to you. As always, please be sure to review the DAC TV calendar regularly to learn about our upcoming meetings, speakers, and social events, and you can make reservations for them. It's been a while since we've heard about Paul Harris. So, Bill, why don't you come up and give us a little bit of education on Paul's progress?
So for people who haven't attended for a while or forgot what I was doing, I've been reading an excerpt about the life of Paul Harris. He's the founder of Rotary. Everybody here should know that. Chicago, 1905. And we're up to episode 15. The club's been founded, and now they have some early traditions. And the very first one was singing. I find kind of appropriate. Singing became an early Rotary tradition. According to early member Harry Ruggles, it started when the meeting might become especially dull. Someone would simply suggest, let's sing. And the club would start singing something like, Let Me Call You Sweetheart. Ruggles stated that it had, quote, a soothing effect on a crowd, that it created a spirit of comradeship. Yes, so we're in we've been trendsetters for a long time here. The club struggled during 1906 as Paul Harris was distracted with a romance with a young lady he met on his journey to Jacksonville, of all places. And there's a whole long story about that. The two corresponded for some months, and Paul finally proposed marriage, but was turned down. His intended was a child of a wealthy and well-connected Florida family, and a rejection might have been due to family influence. He was an up-and-coming lawyer. He hadn't made his fortune yet. So as 1906 came to a close, Paul recovered and became determined to make some changes to the Chicago Rotary Club. At this time, the club had 80 members. And he decided to step out from behind the curtain and become the third president. He had not been president up to this point in time. He felt that Rotary needed a revolution. He stated that Rotary must go forward and it must have something substantial to offer. And this is going to be repeated in the years to come. He presented the club with three basic goals for his presidency. First, to advance the growth of the club. Second, he wanted to expand to other cities. And finally, he wanted to add community service as one of his aims. By 1908, membership of the Rotary Club of Chicago stood at around 200. So the first goal was accomplished. The rapid completion of this goal created another problem. It became difficult to know everyone. So a member that was very influential over many years, Sylvester Shield, made a radical suggestion, and a new tradition still used by Rotary was made. Have club members' pictures printed in a club roster. What a radical idea. We've been, ever since I was in Rotary, we did that. Now we don't print them anymore. The proposal, at that time, no other club, church, or other fraternal organization in the area had ever published their members' pictures. The proposal, and only 65 of the 238 members in 1908 actually had their pictures published. Since then, the tradition has spread to all Rotary clubs. Another Rotary tradition was also born at this time: have someone welcome each Rotarian as they arrive at the meeting. Initially, it was the official club greeter, who was just one person that always did it. Now it's evolved into a revolving Rotary member. There was some opposition or apathy about spreading to other cities. Many Chicago Rotarians were very happy with the existing Chicago club, and they wanted to, quote, leave well enough alone. Paul wanted the club's support for this goal, but he was so determined. He said, I'm going to steam ahead on my own initiative, whether you guys go along with me or not. He believed if he could get the club started on a service project, the problem would take care of itself. This desire eventually resulted in an amendment to the Rotary Club of Chicago's Constitution, adopting a goal of community service, which wasn't in it at that time. The new club member, Don Carter, a patent attorney, was instrumental in this process. Early civic acts of the clubs included helping a traveling preacher who lost his horse to disease, helping a crippled and ragged newsboy with a new set of clothes, and assembling Christmas gift packages for the poor and underprivileged of Chicago. Paul took note of these acts and decided it was time to introduce the club to a major civic service project. So next week is about the first civic project and Chicago politics.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Appreciate that. So this time I would like to recognize Lisa Maria Winslow for a little competition and an announcement about activities this spring.
Okay. All right. Are we competing for Happy Dollars? Are we competing for Happy Dollars?
Oh, no, what do you just ask?
Well, you said competition.
No, I'm fine. Event.
Oh. I'm like, are we competing? Yeah. All right, so I know it's January. We've all got a lot to be happy about, right? Yes, yes. So is there anybody who wants to share those happy moments from the holidays with us today and pay a small little nominal fee? Remember, we can charge your account. Any takers? Any takers? President Charlie.
Yeah, I'll do a $5 happy dollar for the Jacksonville Jaguars and their triumph.
Barry, did I see you making a move for your pocket then?
What little bit I have,
We
yes.
can charge your account. We're happy to share it.
Put me in for 5. Obviously, I'm delighted to have my favorite wife with me today. And I will say this, talking about the Jaguars, yeah, we had a great time down there, and, you know, as we all did, it was just phenomenal. But I think one of the things that I might ask her to do is one of these days, tell you what the impact of all of this fundraising with the district and the tickets and what it has done. Plus, there's a few humorous stories in there too that I'd have to clear with her first. Brought that up.
Awesome. Wonderful. Wonderful. All right.
Put me down to $10.
Whoa.
$10. You guys feel embarrassed?
celebrating my Georgia Bulldog second. Oh, I was good. Yeah, excellent. Yeah, I had $2 out, and then they changed me to 5, and I'm not going to 10. But I was gonna try to outdo him. You said it was a competition, but he's got Cindy here, so that's probably outdo. Does. But we got a new dog. 75 pounds of German Shepherd that has no training and is 5 years old. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, but nothing.
I'm not getting a puppy, you know, that's what I'm about.
Yes, well, I'm 5 years old, and so far as it picked up the 1 quart thing of chicken broth and took it into the side. It wanted to chew up the outside of it, but unfortunately, the inside didn't stay where it was. I know. So if anybody comes to our house, it smells like chicken.
It can smell worse things, all right. This table is in. Bill.
We're just that way. Riff ram bazoo, lickety lickety zoo zoo. Who wah wah who, give them hell TCU. That is actually what the crowd is repeating at the TCU game.
Oh, wow.
It was in the Wall Street Journal. I didn't make it.
It didn't do too well. American should have said, play hard. I mean, drinking goes with.
This is gonna be half the patty for the Georgia Bulldogs.
Oh.
Jaguars, I work at TIAA, so that makes sense, right? And so I won't take too much credit for the fact they're winning now since I've been watching them. And I came to our front door, it turned out to be the color of the jersey. Okay, I'm just saying.
Learned the song.
Well, I was gonna say, congratulations to Chris for getting married.
Charge me, $4 or 80 cents. And I'm just happy to be here. It's been a while and I've missed you all. I'm glad to be back. And charge me another $4.50, because FSU doesn't have playboard next year.
Right.
All right, so wait, Marie, I'm the reason my husband has no money. Here's $20. And that's for this club and for all the clubs for the Rotary Jaguars. We don't have the final numbers yet, but I think we're gonna have close to 40,000 going to the Rotary Foundation on the fund.
Just saying, anyone else? Got one?
Started putting it away.
Nathan, happy to be here and, just wanted to catch up with us. I'm glad I've been here. Thank you guys so much.
Yes, so one more thing, I don't think I need the microphone. We are getting ready to get behind and start our celebration of our annual fundraiser. As many of you may remember, maybe not, I'll refresh your memory, we're going with a derby theme this year. We'll be hosting the event on the river at Bowles. We're very, very excited about it. We will have some gambling and more details to come. Committee's going to be having their first meeting this month. If you're interested in helping with the organization and planning the fundraiser, please just let me know. But we're really excited about kicking it off and having another really successful year and outdoing last year. We did a great job last year and we're going to beat that this year. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa Marie. Just want to remind everyone that there's a District 6970 Membership Summit on Saturday, January 28th at the Daytona State College in Palm Coast. There's a continental breakfast starting at 8 o'clock, and training will begin at 9 and finish around 12:30. You can register online, or Patty will help you with the registration. Now I'd like to recognize Assistant Governor Jerry Kelly to talk about the Emerald Trail project.
For those of you who are not aware, Rotary's made a commitment, at least the local Rotary's made a commitment, local Rotary clubs to support the Emerald Trail in what's called the Rotary Log or Rotary Length or Emerald Trail, which is going to go from underneath 295 down to Memorial Park. And on that, they're going to have a kiosk that's going to display things about Rotary, current events. They're also going to have markings along the way, highlighting Rotary's contributions to the city. This Friday at 9:30, there will be a 30-passenger tour bus, excuse me, a trolley that will be leaving from the Cummer Museum that will go up and visit the La Villa portion of the Emerald Trail, which is completed. It will also go down McCoy's Creek. It will return to Memorial Park, where there'll be a presentation of a $50,000 check, which is our initial contribution to Emerald Trail. It's a 3-year commitment for Rotary. We would ask your support. There's information here I was going to bring it and give it to Lisa and Charlie, but if you would like to see some of it, I have it. It's also online. If you desire to go on the trolley on Friday, just let me know. There is a 30-person limit, but if you like to go, that'd be it. We would appreciate any contributions you can make. The tour will be led by Kay Elas, I believe is her name. And what's the name again? Elas. And she'll be doing it this Friday. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. And that'll be this Friday. Go ahead.
You said the trail is from 295 down to Memorial Park in Riverside?
Yes.
No, 95.
95.
The Fuller Warren Bridge.
Okay, I thought from 295, that was about
Yeah.
10 miles.
The Rotary section is from the 95
I'm sorry.
bridge
Yes.
to Memorial Park.
Oh, okay.
I'm
And it's
sorry.
only a portion of the whole Emerald Trail.
Did I say 295?
So it's
Yeah,
just.
I'm sorry. I meant 90.
a portion of Riverside. That's right.
I meant,
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you for clearing that up. All right, thank you.
All right, at this time, I'd like to recognize John Cope to introduce our speaker today. Thank you, Mr. President. Our speaker today is Andy Walker. His bio was published. I will add that I was a member of the search committee when we interviewed applicants for the CEO position at the Fish and Wildlife Foundation. Andy was clearly the top contender and has done a magnificent job in the 5+ years that he's been our CEO. He's grown the staff to about 7. Our assets at the time Andy became CEO were about 7 million. They're 55 million now. And we're involved very closely with the Fish and Wildlife Commission and a number of other projects that Andy will talk about. Andy?
Thank you, John. Okay. I think this is gonna work. We'll try that. John, thank you very much. And I guess two confessions. One is that I grew up in Pittsburgh and I'm a Pittsburgh Steelers fan. And this is, to be honest, this is probably the one football season it's safe to admit that here in town. So go Jags. And I'm also University of Georgia grad. So how about them dogs? So I really appreciate the opportunity to be here and to tell you a little bit about our foundation. We've been around for a number of years now, but we've been fairly small for most of that time, as John said. We wear a couple of hats. We're a 501c3 nonprofit organization, but we were founded by the Florida legislature to support FWC. But our charter also allows us to work in all aspects of conservation with many other organizations as well. And we've raised about $65 million to date that we've given away to various organizations, including FWC. And we earn the highest seal of approval from Charity Navigator and GuideStar, a very efficient organization. About 90 cents of every dollar goes into programs. And the way really to think about us is as a community foundation, but one that works statewide for conservation and outdoor recreation. We have about 20 members on our board currently from across the state. Here's our current leadership. John is, at this point in time, our only member here from Jacksonville. Kathy Barco just stepped down from our board. Many of you probably know her from Barco Duval Engineering. She's a former commissioner of the FWC as well. So the way we like to think of ourselves also is working at the intersection of need and lasting impact. What I think distinguishes our niche in the conservation field is we can often be first on the scene with funding when something happens. So even though our dollars are limited relative to public funds and some other larger organizations, we're often able to respond very, very quickly to a variety of needs. And we have these 5 conservation initiatives currently that organizes most of our work. I want to spend the most time just talking about conserving wildlife and some of the things we're doing there. We've been involved with Florida panther conservation for decades, and a lot of our work goes into buying the medical equipment and field equipment that FWC biologists need to work with panthers who've been injured in the wild, maybe hit by cars. There's also a disease that panthers and bobcats have been getting. It's affecting their ability to walk. FWC's veterinarian on the right, Hollis Stewart, that's a tranquilized panther that they're testing for the disease and also collaring. Our latest thing with panthers is to try to create a second population, but to do it in a way that it receives widespread support of the landowners. Panthers right now don't move any further north the river. All the denning panthers are down here. But the population is growing and there's also increased development pressure down there. And so, so we're starting to see female panthers trying to den north of the river. But there's less public land up there, and the 4 attempts so far ended in 2 of the female panthers being hit by cars, and the other 2, their kittens not surviving. So we've come up with a strategy working with FWC where we would pay ranchers to maintain good habitat for native wildlife in Florida. And the better the habitat, the more that we would pay them. And this solves the big problem. The big problem ranchers have is calf deprivation by panthers south of the Caloosahatchee River. And there are programs to reimburse them, at least for some of the value of those calves. Problem is you have to produce the carcass to get reimbursed by the federal government or state government. And the panthers drag them off and bury them. So we've, working with the state, have come up with an idea, well, let's just pay them for habitat. And let's assume that the better the habitat, the more likely a panther might pass through. And so it's an incentive to benefit all wildlife down there. And at the same time, cut out all the red tape and the difficulty of trying to get reimbursed when you went from, so many calves 1 week and you realize next week you've lost 8 and you have no idea how or where. We make a lot of grants to minimize human-bear conflict. We've given away about $600,000 to communities and matching grants to buy bear-proof trash cans. These are extensively tested by bears in captivity. And we even send them out west to have grizzlies try them. So they're grizzly proof too. Not everything we do is big. We do a lot of work with the Florida grasshopper sparrow. And this is a small bird down in the central prairies north of Okeechobee that has about 30 pairs left in the world. And the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, FWC, and White Oak Conservation and Jewel League, and we stepped in to start a captive breeding program. And over the years, we've raised and given about $2 million now for sparrow conservation. But we're in the grasslands, central grasslands of Central Florida, north of Okeechobee, which benefits quite a few different species. So this work has gone very well. And we just released a few months ago our 500th captive reared sparrow. Here's John and Kathy Barco in the back, and a couple of us discussing these plans at White Oak, I guess 2 years ago, John, maybe 2.5 at this point. Yeah. If you haven't been, people been to White Oak?
Yeah.
Isn't it an amazing place?
Yeah, yeah.
This is actually also important to sparrows, but not why we got involved. This is the 27,000 acre DeLuca Ranch in Osceola County, again, about 30 miles north of Okeechobee. This was owned by the family behind Subway restaurant chain. And originally it was going to be the heart of a community of about 250,000 people, but this is also the headwaters of the Everglades. There were some problems between the partners. There were accusations of embezzlement and other things. Both partners died. And Mrs. DeLuca, the widow of the founder of Subway, donated the property to the University of Florida a year and a half ago. But with the stipulation that another organization hold a permanent conservation easement over it so that the university can never sell it for development. The trick about that is that most organizations won't agree to that unless the easement is endowed. There's a perpetual fund to send people out there to examine the land every so often, to go to court if necessary to uphold the terms of the easement. And so Nature Conservancy turned this down, and the family turned to DU, and DU is much more interested. And so DU came to us, and actually we committed $200,000 to Central Florida Conservation grants for DU, and the first 110,000 went to endow their easement. And so again, this is where I think we can multiply our impact. So our 200,000 basically helped grease the skids for a $110 million gift of land, really a once in a generation gift of land. It's an amazing place. And University of Florida is using it as both an agricultural research station as well as an ecological research station, and often looking at how those two things can reinforce each other. Manatees. I should talk a bit about manatees. Just the way a community foundation does, we hold money for others, whether it's public or private donors. We've just gotten a $4 million grant from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to upgrade and replace all those signs that you hate when you're out in the water that say slow wake zone. But as this poor manatee shows, 96% of all manatees have prop scars. And so we're in the process of working with FWC to get those new signs put up around the state. But we also hold funds for a number of other species on behalf of the federal government. We've been very involved with manatees the last year and a half in a number of areas. One is feeding manatees. We are the folks who have been buying lettuce to feed manatees on the Indian River Lagoon, where seagrass has really died off due to the harmful algal blooms there. So we bought 200,000 pounds last year, probably as much as 400,000 pounds over the next 3 months this year. FPL also donated the money for us to buy and build that manatee rescue truck you see there that was put into service and rescued its first manatee last June, about 3 hours after the truck was delivered to us. And we're also thinking long-term. This is again the lettuce feeding. This happens at Cape Canaveral. And so you can just imagine what 400,000 pounds of lettuce in small 25-pound boxes looks like. But there are a lot of volunteers from Brevard County Zoo and FWC staff who are doing that. But long-term, we're trying to restore sites. So we raised about $1.9 million last year to restore 9 sites. And we're about ready to start on Northern Biscayne Bay to replant eelgrass and seagrass. We're trying to pick sites with good water quality near tributaries so that if it is another harmful algal bloom, these sites have the best chance of surviving. But that one little plant you saw a woman holding in her hand, if it's in ideal conditions, it can grow 7 feet in all directions in 1 year. It's a very fast growing vegetative runner type of reproduction system. And so even planting a small area, if it's allowed to survive, can really spread quickly. Some of the money we give away, about $6 million a year, comes from these 4 license plates. We administer 3. Hub SeaWorld administers the ocean plate, but we receive about 20% of those proceeds. And all of these funds flow directly into grants to other organizations. For example, our bear plate, just to give you a sense, last year we gave away about $460 for a variety of research and conservation needs, all that we're involved with. Reef restoration is a big one for us. Stony coral tissue loss disease, which hit the reef in 2014, rapidly causes the death of corals that may be hundreds of years old. This is a coral that over 10 days went from being completely alive to dying completely and turning white. The disease spread very quickly, as I'll show you in a moment, and the mortality in some species approaches 100%. So the most deadly thing that has ever hit Florida's coral reef. So in 2014, it was found off the port of Miami, and as you can see, started spreading very rapidly north and south. By the end of 2017, it was all the way up to the St. Lucie Inlet in the north, halfway through the Keys in the south. By 2018, it was approaching Key West, and 2019, and then by 2021, it had spread all the way to the Dry Tortugas. Now, starting in 2018, though, and then in the Caribbean, it's continued to go. This is from 2021. A lot of those green dots where it's not seen yet are now red. It's spread that far, and it's now spread as far as Texas as well. So NOAA and FWC decided to do something nobody had tried before, and they went out just before the disease hit Key West and rescued about 2,000 corals representing 20 species. Really the big, heavy, big corals that represent the reef as we all think about coral reefs. And we hold 700 of them in Orlando in a project that we're doing with SeaWorld and Disney and the Association of Zoos and Aquariums to, first of all, make them survive. And then we're going to start working on breeding them. So we're in the process now of trying to raise just under $5 million with FWC, the Florida Aquarium in Tampa, SeaWorld, and others to expand this facility and be able to start propagating them with the idea that we'll breed them for maximum genetic strength, disease resistance to rising temperatures and salinities, and then put them back out on the reef by the hundreds of thousands. And there's 26 zoos and aquariums around the country working with us on this as well. So a few other things we're doing: artificial reef creation. There's actually a boat sitting here in Jacksonville that I spent some time on in the 1970s, very dear to my heart. That is one of several boats we're looking at for potential buying, cleaning, and sinking as a new artificial reef, either off of Palm Beach area or maybe down in the Keys. We're not sure yet. We've been outplanting those type of elkhorn corals in the Florida Keys, working with FWC to restore the sponge ecosystem in Florida Bay, working to protect spawning aggregations of fish in both the Keys and Tampa Bay. We've just started 2 innovation funds too. One to encourage innovation in fisheries management, the other in coral restoration. Third initiative is combating invasives. We do work on lionfish. We do a lot of burning to remove non-native invasive vegetation, and of course, Burmese pythons. We actually fund the annual Python Challenge that the governor usually comes down for and kicks off. We're also the largest private funder of youth outdoor education in the state. There's a network called the Florida Youth Conservation Centers Network. It's 350 partners providing outdoor education, after school programs, weekend programs to almost 300,000 kids annually. It's led by FWC. They have 6 camps around the state. The closest here would probably be Ocala and Joe Bud, which is by Tallahassee. So we're raising money to renovate those camps right now and expand their capacity. We just received a bequest of a 22-acre farm that we'll probably use as a new camp. And we just led an architectural design competition to try to build very cost-effective new camp buildings as we go forward. And then our last initiative, Preserving Outdoor Heritage, is really about ensuring continued public access to the outdoors, trying to engage new audiences, minorities, women, others in sports. Maybe they haven't been well represented before, and acquiring land like the DeLuca Tract, but also picking up properties that we're adding to the state's wildlife management areas. Some of the things we also do, disaster relief. So we maintain several funds to support FWC employees and their families, also to help charter boat captains in the past. But we can be very quickly on the scene. In fact, when we know a hurricane's coming in, we distribute cash to all the FWC first responders. So if they run into people in trouble, sitting in water, no place to go, not only do they move them, but, we might be able to give them $200 to, find a hotel for a few nights or buy food or whatever it is. So, and then we work with families too to provide some support in rebuilding their homes. So what's next for us? As I said, designing a next generation FWC camps. We've got one planned for Lakeland at a FWC site called Rock, which is a reclaimed phosphate mine area that's just beautiful now. As I said, about raising about $5 million to expand our facility, which holds the greatest number of Florida corals, into the largest propagation facility. Supporting ranchers, again with panthers. The panthers right now are here, and we think that this area is where they're trying to den, and we want to concentrate with working with ranchers there to see if we can create circumstances to increase the odds of success. And then continued support for manatees, and particularly for seagrass restoration. One thing we're trying to do is see if we can fund seagrass restoration using robotics, but also can we sell the carbon credits from growing seagrass and fund it that way? Because right now it costs about $100,000 an acre to replant seagrass, and Indian River Lagoon alone has lost 46,000 acres. So there's no way, any of us are going to spend our way out of that problem. So we're looking for as many different ways as we can to make this work self-perpetuating. And then innovation. It seems like every year we're coming up with new issues to deal with here in Florida, whether it's a new invasive, whether it's an outbreak of red tide or something else. And so we really are trying to keep Florida at the forefront of conservation planning and scientific research. So that's us. There's some literature outside, and we certainly invite you to join us. We don't have a membership per se. We just don't use that term anymore. It doesn't mean much in the era of social media. You have followers, you have supporters. So but in many ways, you can follow us and get to know us better. So, any questions?
You mentioned conservation easement, and I've seen that a lot, but I've never really had much understanding of it. When somebody makes a conservation easement, can they specify it's for certain types of uses, or is that just no use, it's locked up from now until?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I always was taught to think of a piece of land as a bundle of sticks. And one stick of the air rights, and one stick of the water rights, and one stick of mineral rights. Well, the development rights would be one stick, but within that, there's a lot you can do, and I think that's your question. So I've done conservation easements where somebody said, well, I've got 3 children. I know they're going to want to live on this property. I'd like to carve out 3 lots, for future homes. So you do that. If you're looking for you can do anything you want on easement, but if you're looking for the tax considerations, the tax benefits of it, the IRS always says, have you substantially achieved the conservation purposes you met? So if you got 150 acres, you want to carve off 5 acres for a house lot, IRS has no trouble with that. And by the same token, it could be, we're going to keep it undeveloped. We want to continue to cattle ranch it, or we want to be able to do this. So all those things are possible. You just have to, at some point, come back to a tax attorney and say, how close are we to the line in terms of what the IRS is going to allow as a donation, as a deduction or not?
Okay.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, you said that you've got assets of about $65 million. What all is included in that asset?
Yeah. So a fair amount of it is charitable donations that have been received over the year through bequests or outright gifts. Some of it are gifts that we receive specifically from endow programs, whether it's a youth program or maybe a rare plant endowment. We have a rare plant endowment. But a lot of it too is monies we hold for others, the way a community foundation does. So if you talk to most community foundations, they'll say, well, we have about $100 million, 95 million of it is earmarked by the donor for certain things. And we have about 5 million unrestricted. We're about the same way. About 90% of our money has been earmarked by someone for whatever purpose. And sometimes they leave it to us to decide how to spend it. Other times they're involved in the decision. But our biggest chunk, about half of our money, is from gopher tortoise mitigation. We hold the monies that the state collects for people who have to move gopher tortoises. And then we release that money slowly over time as those lands get developed. So the developer pays into us. We hold the money until the developer starts to develop, and then we pass it to the people who are taking the tortoises. So it's not permanent with us, but there's just so much development statewide in Florida that we have a lot of that right now. So that's about 30 million that we hold just for the tortoise program. So that may all go away at some point if that tortoise program goes away. But we have a great diversity of different types of funds like that. So, yes.
I may have missed it, but what is the cause of the coral tissue loss disease?
We're not sure. We don't know if it's a virus or a bacteria. It's probably not from the Atlantic Ocean because it has all the hallmarks of an introduced disease. Affects a lot of species, 20 species at least. High mortality, moves rapidly, kills corals in a week and a half. We've never seen this before. So it's probably from the Pacific or the Indian Ocean or somewhere and came in the bilge tank of a ship because it first showed off right off the port of Miami. So it probably got dumped out of a bilge tank. I don't know if any of you are like bats, but in the northern part of the United States, eastern United States, we have something called white nose syndrome, which is a fungus that bats get. They've killed about 10 million bats in the United States. Well, we traced it back to caves in Eastern Europe, and it came in on somebody's shoes into a tourist cave in Albany, New York. and in 10 years had killed 10 million bats. So it's probably an introduced disease. Yes.
Following up on that coral question, when you talk about reintroducing coral into an area where so much of the coral has died, what prevents the new corals from catching the same kinds of disease, or are there different kinds?
Well, that's a good question. We've not seen a disease as severe as stony coral tissue loss disease. Most diseases affect corals that are suffering. It's local. It's like, okay, it's here, it's not over here. This is, 350 miles long. So we're doing a few things right now. We're going back out and looking for survivors, corals that, the mortality is not a full 100%. So the hope is the 2 or 3% for some of those species that survive, maybe they have some genetic resistance. So we're gonna bring them into the lab we are now, and they'll be bred with the corals that got protected. And then corals go back out to be tested, both in the lab and in the ocean. So even though we brought all these corals in, we're also out planning almost at the same time to see what lives, what doesn't, and then the survivors will bring back in. So it's a long process to try to look for that disease resistance. Yeah. There were more questions. Yeah, on the back.
So you mentioned, you showed some examples of restoration. I live on Fishware Creek, which opens up in St. John's, and they literally last week started the restoration project. You all, I know the Army Corps is driving that. Do you all get involved in those kinds of things?
We do from time to time. We have not been involved in the St. John's. I love the St. John's, and it's always kind of bugged me. We don't have much going on up there. But we primarily, there's only a few areas where we have scientific and conservation expertise ourselves. Quite often we're relying on FWC, or U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, sometimes the Corps staff to tell us what needs done. And so we're looking to fill gaps either with technologies or funding or just what else is needed. Yeah. Yes.
To what extent do you coordinate your activities with neighboring states, organizations that would do similar things?
We haven't, Florida, the way Florida is shaped, we don't have a lot of similar border. We don't share a lot of borders. I worked for the Nature Conservancy for many years in Tennessee, and we were involved with absolutely every state around us. It's been less true here. Some in the Red Hills with Georgia for sure. Certainly in the Caribbean when it comes to coral disease. We've been supporting work down there similar to what's being done in Florida. And a little bit with Texas, particularly now that Texas has coral disease. But I would say the Texas Parks and Wildlife Foundation, which our sister organization over there, I'd say they're about 5 years further than us in our evolution. And so we're always comparing notes with them and say, what are you guys doing we're not doing, and that sort of thing. Yeah.
Excuse me, it seems that I recall coral had been dying, not just in Florida, but in other areas for decades. And this was not a phenomenon. That's why I was kind of surprised.
Yeah.
I mean, it looked the same way. They looked like they were all bleached. Is it the same disease or different diseases?
Yeah, the situation with coral is unfortunately has a lot of problems. The coral bleaching, as the term goes, is related to water temperature. Corals are very sensitive. They have a very narrow band of water temperatures that they can survive in. It's a symbiotic relationship. So the water gets too hot, the little coral animal ejects all of the algae, and that's what turns it from different colors into white. And they can live like that for a little bit, but they need the algae for food. So if the water temperature doesn't come down, they die. So that's a lot of what's going on. There are other local diseases. You have problems with siltation. There's possibly problems with antibiotics and other things getting into the system that might be interfering with reproductive. One theory is that coral disease, stony coral tissue loss disease, would not be as bad if the reef wasn't already under stress. But we are, because of all of those factors, plus increasing water temperature, and salinity and increasing acidity in the ocean. All these things means that in the future, all coral reefs are going to have to be actively managed to survive. The idea of wild coral is basically behind us now. It's going to have to be managed like anything else. Yes.
You covered a lot of ground. Two of the most popular outdoor activities, like folks in my friend group, scalloping and lobstering. And you didn't talk about either of those two things. So do you have any involvement with the Florida spiny lobster or the scallop industry?
We've been not so much with scallops, but though I've been looking in Sarasota Bay area to support an effort there with scallops. They're trying to do 1 million clams, and they want to do the same thing with scallops over there. So we're talking to them about possibly funding some of that work. Spiny lobsters we've done more for primarily in the Keys. And one of the interesting things is we've realized they're very territorial, and they will attack some of the things that are eating coral. So, which is usually fine, but when you have a reef that's down to 2%, maybe in some places what it used to be, you can't allow for a lot of nibbling on the coral. So we've been funding right now a study looking at how spiny lobsters and other lobster species down there can protect the reef. What is their role in protecting coral? But in terms of, the fishery per se, I would say that our work with sponge restoration in Florida Bay is probably a way where we're trying to actually rebuild an ecosystem from the ground up again that would support spiny lobsters as much as everything else. Good. Thank you very much. Oh, one more question.
One more. No, we have time.
I was wondering if there's been some correlation found between big sugar and red tide, and I didn't know if you were thinking on that, see if those are valid correlations or the evidence is in a different direction.
Yeah. We haven't done those studies, and but I'll give you my own. Never stops me from voicing an opinion. I think with 22 million people living in Florida now, the issue is septic systems and lawn fertilizer more than anything else. I think big agriculture has done quite a bit to clean up its operation. But what you do have, nutrients locked in sediments for the last, maybe, all through the 20th century got deposited at the bottom of Lake Okeechobee or what have you. And really red tide and the bad blue-green algae bloom had everything to do with the Army Corps releasing water into the St. Lucie River on the east and into the Caloosahatchee on the west. And, until we can fix Lake Okeechobee and the reservoir they want to build below it, so that the Corps is no longer discharging water east and west to keep the dike from holding around Lake Okeechobee in high water times, we run a real risk of these same things happening. Now, the thing about red tide is it's starting 30 or 40 miles off the coast, off the Gulf Coast. Natural phenomena, and a lot of it has to do with dust from the Sahara, which is very iron rich. So a year we get a lot of dust, we have a good chance of red tide. But it used to be patchy, used to move around. But now, as soon as it gets near the coast and it picks up all the lawn fertilizer and everything coming off of Tampa and Sarasota, and I live in Sarasota and Naples, then it sticks. Then sticks around and coming out of the Caloosahatchee River. So it's a multi-pronged issue. And actually, the state's been putting a lot of money into closing septic systems in the Indian River Lagoon and raising the sewage treatment plants from secondary to tertiary. And tertiary, they remove the nutrients. So it really has to do with just a death by 1,000 cuts. It's all of us as homeowners as much as anything.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I want to give you a
Oh, thank you.
commemorative coin of our four-way test of Rotary. So
Thank you very much.
thank you very much. That was fascinating. It's amazing to see just how many things you all do. So that's incredible. And don't forget your watch. It looks very nice. But anyway, just a reminder to join us next week when our speaker will be Sally Hayslip to speak on special education. If everyone would please stand and join me in the four-way test of the things we think, say, or do. 1, 2, fair to all concerned. 3, 4, beneficial to all concerned. We got to find a better way. Thank you all.